Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidtless Live. I'm Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry. You can check us out at foundrymakes.com. Today's show is meant to educate and inspire you, a leader in technology and design, and I'm so excited to have my friend Jaime joining us. Today, we're going to talk about conscious leadership and how important it is, especially today while we're all virtual. And Jaime has been coaching leaders for a long time, so I'm really interested in getting her perspective into this important topic. So I want to introduce Jaime. Jaime, how are you today?
I'm doing great. The
Good.
sun is out finally in Minnesota, so it's a day.
It is, even though it's negative something. I don't know what.
Right. Feels like it's January, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's January. So, Jaime, you're over at Keystone. Tell me about what you do there at Keystone.
Yeah. So I started Keystone 7 years ago. We are focused on really change, growth, and kind of transformation for small and mid-market businesses. So we work in the areas of strategy, leadership, and culture. We kind of say we work at the intersection of all three, right? How to use all three as a competitive advantage to really push your business forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love the work you do, and you're so well connected, and you talk to so many leaders, and this concept of conscious leadership. You and I had previously talked a little bit about it. Do
Yeah.
you feel like this concept is more important that since we're all virtual now, than it was beforehand, or is it the same? Is it, tell me about conscious leadership.
Yeah. So when we say I do a lot of speaking on conscious leadership. This is kind of my goal is to help leaders just grow and be better because it's really what creates that competitive advantage for the performance of our organization. And so when we talk about conscious leadership, it's really leaders caring, loving, and trusting their people. And we use the word love, which is a weird word to use in the workplace, but it just more than just I manage you, right, and you do your job, and it goes beyond that, and it's
Yep.
developing that relationship, getting the most out of your people, and it has become an absolute necessity. So if you think over the last 8 months, I think in businesses one of the biggest things that has changed is the expectations of leaders
Hmm.
have just increased at a rapid pace, right? That evolution and conscious leadership is becoming, it was there before, right? Emotional intelligence and some of these different skill sets, but it's like a necessary thing now. And we're starting to see our clients purposely look for this in the leaders that they're hiring.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because as you and I talked, the past 8 months have shown bad leadership doesn't have a place to hide right now. It's got a spotlight showing on it when you're not intentional, you're not empathetic. These types of things in the type of communication we have now, without body language. It's I've really seen some changes in the approach that I should say the focus that leaders have these days. And
Yes.
and
And
would
it's,
you go ahead?
and but the requirements of leaders have, they've always been there,
Yeah.
but I think it's just, they're becoming, like you said, more exposed. So we talk
Hmm.
about the last 8 months, a year, leaders have been born and leaders have been exposed, right? Those are the
Yeah.
two things. There have been
Yep.
people in your organizations that you didn't know had the leadership qualities. They might not have had the experience, but they had the emotional intelligence and they had those leadership qualities that are coming out of the woodwork where companies are like, I had no idea, right? That we had this
Yeah.
person here already. So
Yep.
that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, and being that person, I like to talk to, which is the leader who's leading leaders, right? The person who's leading other leaders. It's really important to set an example too, right? Of how you expect other people to be treated. I always think back to a time when I had a leader I was working with, and I remember I had gotten promoted, and like my first meeting with my new leader at the time, basically told me, well, everybody's replaceable. And I
There's
remember,
motivation for you.
yeah, and I remember thinking to myself, I mean, this person was trying to just be honest and say like they were replaceable, everybody's replaceable. But I really took that as, I was just a cog in a wheel, and that they didn't have larger goals or plans for me. And I know this person genuinely didn't mean it in a negative way. They were just trying to be matter of fact or something. And I think back to what I'm doing these days as a leader and how intentional I need to be in my language. Otherwise, I feel like you run the risk of these types of things just slipping out. And you've got to be very intentional and be putting your employees first over your own agenda, right? Because how else are you going to learn as a leader too, right? Um, and I want to ask you, Jamie, like where have you seen people really challenged the last few months? What are people focused on? What type of tactics or things are they doing to improve that communication? What have you
Yep.
seen working? What's not working?
Well, I'll tell you three things that we're telling all leaders they need to be thinking about and they need to be getting better in. The first one, and we've talked about it, is emotional intelligence, and otherwise known as EQ, right? It's the IQ EQ battle. And so they're talking about EQ being the number one leadership skill of the next 10 years. And that's been, they've been talking about that a couple of and out, right? There's to engage their team, hear about their team during all of the one standing out right now. So it's emotional intelligence piece. The other, what we're calling leader as coach. We just developed a whole training program around this. Around how do you coach your people versus just manage them to an end result. And you're seeing this kind of thing, and the analogy is, teaches you the fundamentals of basketball. Your basketball coach helps you really refine it and helps you learn the strategies and use your strengths in the game, right? And that's what leaders are having to do, is they're having to be coaches instead of just managers trying to get to the end of a project, right? To hit a deadline, to hit a financial target. And that's the big difference that we're seeing. And then the third piece is leaders are having to ask different questions. We're talking a lot about that with our clients right now, is in this world that we're living in right now, we have to turn people's brains back on. And the way that we do that is by asking them different questions than we used to ask them, right? To have them think differently about the problem we're trying to solve or the situation that we're in. And so by asking different questions, I think as leaders, we get a better answer, right? We get our people to engage at a deeper level. And so those are the three: emotional intelligence, really being a coach, and asking different questions are fundamental right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've always looked back at, past leaders who, people who have led me have helped me become who I am. And, I like to joke that I probably learned the most from the bad leaders than I did from the good ones, So whenever I'm coaching someone and they bring up a bad leader that they might have had in the past or something, I'm like, that's an opportunity. You can turn
Totally.
those those lemons into lemonade there, because you know what not to do, what doesn't work, and what kind of messaging doesn't work and what isn't going to work. And so you had mentioned over the next 10 years, you see EQ becoming a big part of the requirements. But how do you judge that? It seems like such a, again, going back to hard skills versus soft skills, if you're looking to hire leaders or bring leaders up in that situation, what are some of the things you can do to find out what their level of emotional intelligence is? Is there ways? Is it Strengths Finder? Is it Myers Briggs? What do you do?
Yeah. So there are a couple of great, and I'm just looking, I probably have the book here somewhere, but there are a couple of great EQ tests. They're pretty simple that you can do online. I think even some of them are free. And again, not fully scientific, but helping leaders just understand kind of where they're at on the spectrum. Because here's the thing about emotional intelligence. For some people, it's natural. Just
Hmm.
like an athletic ability, right?
Sure.
Other things, analytical, different skills we have. Some people it's very natural, but it's a muscle.
Hmm.
So all leaders can build it. That's what we talk about. Now, if I'm not good at it naturally, am I going to be an all-star at it? Probably not. But I can do a good job by exercising that muscle and being very focused on it. So when you talk about emotional intelligence, it's a tough one to define for people
Yeah.
because it's more around inspiring, right? The care for people, humility, right? Vulnerability, how you show up. And you also see emotional intelligence grow as leaders have more experience or further in their careers, right? Because once I get to my age, I'm like, listen, I know what I'm good at, what I'm not. Like, there's no hiding it anymore, right? But when I was 28 or 30 and had my first leadership role, I was trying to like make sure no one realized that I wasn't as good as they thought I
Right. Yeah.
was, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Different phases of your life. So I think the bigger thing is teaching them young when you have younger leaders in your organization, because then they're going to be better when they get
Yeah.
older, like us, no offense.
Yep.
um, but unless trying to break them of it later. And I think
Right.
that's what we're experiencing in a lot of organizations right now is we have people that were never taught to be leaders. We put them in the role
Yep.
and we never gave them the skills. We never gave them the coach to learn how to refine that game. We just told them lead people, and they thought that meant driving
Yeah.
excuse me, driving to a finish line, whatever that takes. And we're having that issue now, right? Where a lot of those people are in high up leadership positions in a lot of organizations,
Yeah.
and they're not great at it.
It's true. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head because it's and also as a new leader, just like you mentioned, right? I don't want to go to my boss and say I need a coach. I'm not super good at this because that's scary, right? They're going to be like, why did I put you in this position then?
Yep.
But it's something I definitely encourage people to go and have those honest conversations saying, you don't have to say I'm not good at this. You can say, I want to get better at
Yep.
this. And so I want to reach out and find a coach, or I want to find those other things. And if you're not comfortable with that, I mean, obviously building up your network and looking for people in your industry or peer groups or things like that, where you can have those honest conversations are important because I think you, just like you said, though, is, there's people that are um, work to get a promotion because they want to make more money and they want to have more power basically
Yep.
over things versus they truly enjoy leading people.
Right.
And I think that's where I've seen good leaders and bad leaders were people that they're trying to, and there's nothing wrong with trying to get more money or climb the ladder or whatever, it's
Yeah.
fine. But you do need to have an honest conversation with yourself, because if in the organization you're at, the only upward mobility is management of people, then you really have to take time to say, is this a skill that I want to grow and improve? Because that's the back to the intentional piece. That's what I don't see a lot of leaders doing. They're like, well, if it's a necessary evil, I got to manage this team.
Right. And this is actually something that almost isn't even the leader's fault. It's fundamentally broken. And we talk about it with a lot of our clients is organizations need to start looking at two tracks of advancement in organizations. And some have already done this, but I don't think they've done it well because they've left the stigma on the management track is the only track where I get promotions and the clout, right? And
Yep.
more power in that. And we talk to our clients about that individual contributor track where you don't have direct reports, but you could be on an executive team as an individual contributor if you are a principal architect
Hmm.
or you're an engineer in an engineering firm. You don't want to manage people, but you still have that strategic mind,
Yeah.
right? You still have a voice in the organization. Society has never been good at really showing that you can do that without having to lead and manage people, which is why people have to take that management route when they don't love it, they're not passionate about it, and it
Yep.
shows,
Yep.
right? You can't hide it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly to your point. I think the organizations it's their responsibility in a lot of cases to create these
Mhm.
paths. Otherwise, people will leave and go to other places where they do have those opportunities, and
Yep.
that's a sure sign of problems that are going to come later because you've spent so much time grooming and growing this person. Now they're going to take their talents to a competitor
Yeah.
or something, right? And that's not what you want to do. Yeah. So Jamie, let me ask, if let's say I am a new leader, a new manager, like what's your suggestions? Like I mentioned, looking for peer groups, mentorship, that sort of thing. But what are some of your suggestions on finding a coach, or what should I be looking for if I decide, yes, I do want to get better at this? What are the things I should be doing? Just reading more books or what?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things because, I think back to my first leadership experience, at 28, 29, I couldn't afford a coach, or in my head, I couldn't afford a coach. First off, I think everybody should have a coach. I have a coach and I'm a coach, right? Like everybody should have a coach. And the reason being is you're too close to what you're working on. You're
Yep.
too close to the issues, to the gaps, to the blind spots. You need someone that can help you. Now, that doesn't always mean forking out tons of money. There's a lot of different options,
Yeah.
right? It's somebody who would maybe mentor you. If you find a peer in your organization, which is what I did early in my corporate career, is I found people that I respected that were leading in a way that inspired me, and I just asked them to be a mentor. Right. And now you need to formalize it, and you have to be kind of organized about it so that it's not a waste of their time. But if they're that kind of leader, they want to do those types of things to help others. So find those peers. There is a lot of like networking peer groups that aren't super expensive, right? That
Hmm.
you could be part of.
Yep.
And the way, if it was me in my days, selling it to my boss, I would not make it I need to be a better leader, meaning I need to work on all these skills.
Yeah.
It's I want experience and exposure to a broader so that I can bring that back to the company, right? And make us all better because we
Hmm.
should be constant learners. And so I would just sell it in a way of so that you don't kind of have to expose, because I know that's hard when you're a
Yeah.
younger leader, but just that this is a benefit to the company, I think, if I do this and what that looks like.
Mm.
And then if you're at that point, I think a coach is really critical, and it doesn't mean a coach forever. It could be for 6 months,
Sure.
right? It can be for a shorter stint to just help you. But I also think, I learn listening to podcasts, right? Reading books. There are a lot of things, joining forums online. You can get a lot of what you need, and you pick up bits and pieces here and there that are going to make you better just that way if you
Yeah.
truly can't afford some of the other options.
Yeah. And so let me ask you something too, because I get this a lot in the career coaching I've been doing this year. If I'm a female leader, should I be looking for other female groups? Should I be diverse? As a, obviously as myself as a privileged white male, the opportunity to find that is pretty easy. But the idea that, and some of the women that I've been coaching this year have kind of struggled finding other peer groups. What's your suggestion for women leaders specifically in finding that coach and looking for those coaches? Should it be gender specific? Should it not be? What's your take?
Yeah, there's two sides to this, and I might talk out of both sides of my mouth. So just
That's okay.
bear with me.
I do it every day,
Um,
so it's fine.
right. That's why I love you. But I would look at it as it's what you need. Like really look at what you need. So if you are looking for, right, how to be a strong female in without looking like the B word, right, which is what I dealt with early in my career. I was kind of aggressive, and I knew what I wanted. I didn't know how to get it,
Yeah,
but I just knew I wanted to grow and I wanted to learn this, and it came across, right. Well, that's the stereotype.
sure.
Then I would look for females, right, that you can model after that have dealt with that, right, or gotten through it or
Hmm.
softened the edges, whatever you need. Then I would look for that. But I think there is such a dynamic male female relationships to give you a different perspective.
Hmm.
But it's really the end all be all is what you feel comfortable with,
Okay.
right? With a coach, the lines get blurred personally, professionally, right? All of the things you're talking about in a coaching session isn't just, I had this situation at work.
Yeah.
It could be in your community, in your relationships, so you need to feel comfortable with the person. And if that means a female for a female, then go that route. I mean,
Okay.
there's plenty of amazing female coaches
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Now, for men, on the other hand, I think finding a strong female coach
Hmm.
when we talk about emotional intelligence is a really, really good idea,
Mm.
because I think it again gives you a different perspective.
Yep.
And when you look at the workforce, and if you're a male manager or a leader, you've probably got a pretty big female your reporting base, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just looking at the numbers, and so you've got to be able to relate. So I think there is some benefit. So
Yeah.
it's not it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, either side.
No, that makes sense. I feel that you're going to have a diverse workforce, so you should count. And leadership doesn't see color, or true leadership doesn't care. Good leadership is just good leadership. It doesn't matter where that person is, coming from, gender, color, or anything, right? But to your point, the workforce is just getting more and more diverse. So
Mhm.
I think it's great advice to open up your coaching to that diversity as well. I think it can help you see past, and that's what's worked really well for me. I mean, just doing this show for the last 3 years, talking to
Yeah.
such amazing leaders as yourself, has really helped me grow and see other opportunities and learn, about different ways of approaching opportunities, right? Because early in my day, I thought, well, a process will fix this. But then quickly I learned in my youth that there's no process problems, it's all people problems.
Correct.
And once you can start to sort through the people stuff, then the processes just become a natural extension of those folks, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's always a people issue.
it's always,
Right, we're
it's always,
human,
it's always
right?
people.
We're perfectly imperfect, and
Yep.
we don't show up, and we don't always say the right thing and do the right thing. But again, that's where conscious leadership comes in, is if you've got trust built,
Hmm.
if someone says the wrong thing or you say the wrong thing, you don't, your best friends that you have trust with, your family, don't count you out because of one situation.
Right.
And when we can develop that, then we can be human with each other and realize that we're going to have off days, right? Or we're going to make a bad decision or whatever that is, but it doesn't mean we're fundamentally flawed. It just means we made a mistake, right? And so I
Yep.
think, first off, that's just society in general. Can we just give each other a little grace right now and
Right.
realize we're all humans? That would be fantastic.
just to, just to give you,
Sorry, little PSA there.
yeah, no, I think it's really important. And that's what I've found as a leader this year is how much more intentional in my communication I need to be, because a lot of employees, in an office setting, you pick up on visual cues from a leadership, right?
Yep.
You're picking up on cues, especially if you're newer, right? You're really picking up on these little cues that are happening all over. And now that we're all virtual, for the most part, those visual cues are gone. You don't see, that, well, most people go to lunch at 12:30 versus they go to lunch at 1 or thing. It sounds benign, but
Yep.
especially to a new employees, those that the getting into rhythm with people and being able to chat with them and feeling like a part of the group is a huge part of becoming that person, right?
Yes. And
Yeah.
we've been talking to a lot of our leaders about the basic human needs of yourself and your employees, right? Things like certainty and significance and growth and love. Right? As humans, we all have these basic human needs that when all of this happened and we went into our houses and didn't come out, and right, a lot of those basic human needs weren't being met.
Yeah.
And what conscious leaders really realized is I can help my people meet that in the workplace, even if
Hmm. Yeah.
socially and
Right.
personally they can't. And that created loyalty, it created trust, all these things we talk about. Is you have to be aware of that because you're talking about a human, not just a person at the office, right? This person, we're complex and we have a lot of different things going on in our lives and you don't always know. But as leaders, we have to care about the whole person, not just their production at the office or did they hit their deadline. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest piece with leadership is you actually have to want to care about that
Hmm.
if you're a leader.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, especially just like I said, you don't have those that body language and those visual cues that you do in the office. I think of it as simple as myself, for example, like during lunchtime, like being sitting with the rest of the employees and eating lunch with them, right? It gives them the opportunity to get to know me. I'm not the big scary president person. We can have a conversation, and so now, we do these kind of virtual hangouts and these virtual chats, which I think are helpful, but I have to be much more top of mind and intentional when I'm doing those than I can be as casual if I'm in person. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's the asking different questions too, right?
Right.
Back to that leadership skill is don't just keep it surface level. I think those
Right.
days are over,
Right.
especially if we're remote. Is we joke we do HR consulting,
Yep.
right, and help
Yep.
organizations, but we also are the ones that are like the HR lines have been blurred, and now HR people don't kill me if you're listening, but right, the things you talk about. I mean, you just came into my house every day, right, on the Zoom
Right.
call. The lines are blurred, whether we want them to be or not.
Yep.
And again, I think we're getting to a point where we can ask those questions. Like we even created a worksheet that was a one pager for leaders to use with their people, to have their people kind of rate themselves on the basic human
Okay.
needs from 1 to 10, just to be able to have a conversation to say, this week might be a sucky week. As we were going through this, my spouse got laid off, or, my dad's sick, or like, where are you on these things? Because it plays into how you're showing up, in work. And we need to support you in that, right? Whatever it is. And so I think just opening that dialogue up is the first step, and not worrying about if you're asking the wrong questions, right? Or if you're
Hmm.
getting too personal, like, let the employee guide that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always said the best leaders ask, you ask the best questions. That's why you're a good leader because you ask the best questions. And those
Yep.
questions don't have to be, how's the project coming along? Right.
Right.
It can be like, hey, I saw you were out sick last week. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Um, hey, I'm going to be in your area. Do you need me to drop off any, whatever, like
Yeah.
being a human being, and not, I mean, like when I was younger, it was kind of like leadership was, you try to avoid talking to them, right? You stay under the radar, right? Remember back in the day,
Yep.
like, oh, I want to be under the radar, I don't want to be on their radar.
Yeah.
Whereas as now, if you're, growing in your leadership skills, you do want to be on the radar,
Yeah.
and it's okay to make mistakes and own up to them and all those things, but I see that, it's scary for those new leaders, right?
Mhm.
What's your advice, Jamie? If I'm interested in growing and improving my leadership, the first step in a lot of cases being able to manage your manager, right, or being able to manage up. So let's flip the script a little bit. We've been talking about the people who are in charge, but let's talk about the people and how they manage their managers, right? How have you
Mhm.
seen people be successful in managing up or managing leadership? What are some, does it go back to the same thing you were saying about emotional intelligence and those types of things? I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of scary to ask my boss about, I don't know, their kids or something, isn't it? I don't know. What's your suggestions?
So it's different for everybody,
Sure.
because some of us are more open, right? A more open book about our personal lives, and some aren't. So it kind of depends on the dynamic with your leader. But find a common ground, right? Maybe it's mountain biking, or it's distance learning with kids, or jokes. I mean, we've got a lot of humorous things that have happened during COVID for us to kind of rally together and be like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with that too.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like your deep dark secrets and bearing your soul to start, right? i
Yep.
i think it's creating some of those commonalities, which is a lot of work that we do with teams. Is to develop trust is not about trust in the work you do. It's trust in knowing each other as humans. Like, oh, I didn't know you were from that town, right?
Mm,
I grew up near there, or my cousin's from there. Or
yeah.
it's finding out those hidden pieces about you that aren't hidden for a reason. It's just it's never come up in conversation.
Yeah. Nobody's probably
And
asked.
right. And when you find that commonality, you're usually just you've got something to build upon, right? When you meet someone from your alma mater, right? They went to the same college as you. You're just immediately like, I like that person, right? You just have a common bond. So it's finding that commonality that you're both passionate about. Cooking, right?
Yeah.
Again, biking, something, and start with that. And I think by you opening up and asking questions, because here's the other thing as leaders is we can ask questions to our employees, and we can ask similar questions up in the organization. It's
Hmm.
about being curious and caring about other people, other projects, other things going on. And most leaders want people who are curious,
Yeah.
right? Who are asking those
Yep.
questions. So just don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. Because that curiosity, again, don't, as I say to people all the time, don't wait for the title to get the job,
Right.
and start doing the job, right? You can find ways to show that you have these muscles, to your point, Jamie, without getting the promotion or the job title or the management position. There's ways you can do that by going to your leaders and asking, what can I take off your plate?
Right.
What can I help with? Show that to your point, you're curious, and you're invested in the organization. You're invested in growing as a leader, and because of, it's very rare that a leader has somebody ask if they could get something taken off their plate. I think that would really stand out. Most
Right.
people are piling it on. Right.
Right. Or I had this idea. I think there's an easier way for us to do this. Can I take a stab at it?
Yeah.
Who's going to say no to that? Now,
Right.
we might not make the decision to change, but can I
Sure.
look at this? Can I map out this process? Can I talk to this person and see if there's something, a better way to do this? Again, most leaders are going to be like, absolutely,
Hmm.
right? Because it's on top of what you already do, but you're
Yep.
taking the initiative.
Yep.
And
Right.
that's important as remote employees right now too. We're having that conversation is you have to be raising your hand virtually and saying, "Hey, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Can I join that committee?" Right?
Yep.
I want to help you do that thing. You have to. You can't wait for someone to tell you. Like maybe at the office, and hopefully not even at the office you were doing that, but
Yep.
you have to be really front and center so that your
Yep.
leader sees you, right? And that means raising your hand.
Yeah, like don't wait for the space to be created for you, right? Just like we've been talking about being intentional, like I think it's the same thing for the employees that want to grow and learn. Like, you've got to. It's okay to create some space around for yourself, and move in and ask those questions. And again, like if there's not an opportunity now, it doesn't mean there's never going to be an opportunity
Correct.
again. You want to be that person that's constantly pushing on those things, right? Otherwise, don't complain if a year from now you're still in the same role, you're still doing the same job or whatever. Then that, I feel like in a lot of cases, is your choice. You haven't challenged the organization to create that space for you. And if you're that's why I always say, like, when I'm coaching people and they're like, well, when they're coming out of college, should I go to a large organization, a big giant corporation versus a smaller
Mhm.
one? And I usually tell them, like, if you're more comfortable with the company kind of making all the decisions for you, a big organization is great, because all you're gonna have to do is just show up, sit down, and get your work done.
Mhm.
In a smaller organization, that's why they say you're gonna wear more hats, right? Because
Yep.
there is opportunity there to expand and try different things. So, I think it really makes a difference on where you choose to work. Back to your point about it, it depends, right? It depends on where your leadership sits.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Jamie, I want to thank you for joining me today. If I'm interested in Keystone and the work that you're doing, Jamie, like, where's a great place to find out? I know you do a lot of talks and you've got a podcast as well. So where can I find all that stuff? Because I have to highly recommend your show to folks that are listening to this. I
Thank
think
you.
if you got a kick out of this episode, you will love all of Jamie's stuff. So where can I find out more?
The easiest spot is probably to go to Keystone Group International, Keystone Group INTL.com. That's got a link to our podcast, which is called Superpower Success. So you can get it in iTunes, Spotify, any place that you get podcasts. And it's really about bringing business leaders on to talk about their journeys and talk about their wisdom, right? And kind of the lessons that they've learned along the way. So it's telling those stories. And then, yeah, Keystone, please connect with me on LinkedIn. If people want, we put out a lot of great content. I write a lot. We give a lot because we want leaders to be better. We want them to have the resources. So I'm more than willing to have those discussions, just like I know you are,
Yeah.
with leaders who are trying to grow. So I'm Jaime Taets on LinkedIn. Definitely would love to connect.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Jamie. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, and I just I always appreciate your input and being a good mentor for me.
Anytime, anytime. Anytime you've got a project and something up your sleeve, I'm in.
All right, Jamie. All right, everyone. I'm going to close out here. So thanks for watching. Check out Jamie's stuff. It's really great. I'm going to put links in the description below. And so if you've got anything that you have not commented on yet, if you have some comments, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't, hit the subscribe and the like and all that other stuff. Thanks everyone for taking the time out of your day. I'll see you next time.